Hey guys, Matt. Need a 2-minute lead in before starting chapter 24. What is all that stuff on the back of the dollar bill? What is going on? So it might be interesting if you want to grab a dollar bill, flip it over, or just go to Google Images and type in back of dollar bill. And all those fun shapes and symbols will come up. We can take a look at some of them. This all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar bill, it's like the interpretation of as above, so below. You can sit 20 smart people down and they're going to give you a little bit of a different interpretation. If somebody knows or says, I know exactly what that is, then they don't. Okay? It's the same with as above, so below. The explanations might be similar. There may be overlapping concepts, but somebody that says, I know exactly everything there is to know about that, if you're not initiated past the 30th level or whatever goes on in the lodges, if you're just a regular person like us, no, you don't know exactly. So I explore a lot of different things. Many things will get close to the mark, but I'm the first to say pretty much nobody knows exactly what that thing is. And last note, I think we would have a consensus here that for certain types of news items that shock the world news, our default is it's not real. It's like the scorpion that my analogy was it asked the fox to swim across the river and the fox got stung by the scorpion. Why'd you do that? It's in my nature. Well, we know it's nature. We don't need to look at anything closely. Maybe we'll be wrong about a few. The default is it's bullcrap. Let's move on. Chapter 24. How could money be the main focus for almost everybody, and nobody knows a thing about the symbols on the back of the dollar bill? Well, I know old George Washington's on the front, and I know some fake story about chopping down a cherry tree. Isn't that good enough? No. Do people think all that bizarre stuff on the back of the dollar was just designed because somebody thought it was pretty? Rather, it's hardcore occult symbolism to the highest degree. Some would say it's some form of magic, like a rune, for example. Interesting, the people that know the least are the most apt to laugh at what was just said. Maybe the laugh is to cover up their own ignorance. If you ask somebody random on the street to go flip over a dollar bill and to tell you about the great American seal that appears there and all that symbolism, what would they say? The average person, amazingly, would know almost nothing about any of it, yet they covet money more than anything. Now let that sink in for a moment. Each circle on the back shows the front and back of this great American seal, designed shortly after 1776. How is it possible nobody knows anything about it on the street? Why didn't we have a full day on it in like 5th grade? Maybe you can already answer questions like that, having read or listened this far. Clearly, it should make sense that every American should know what that strange symbolism represents in the Great American Seal. It's not just fun artwork by Betsy Ross. It's the American Seal, for crying out loud. But nobody spends even a day on it in school. More detail will come later, but at this stage, almost nobody, or this is meant for the newbie is not ready to understand what it really is. For now, just take a moment to realize how strange it is that there's an Egyptian pyramid with a glowing eye staring at you every time you pay for something. Don't you think the Great American Seal should be something actually related to American values, history, heritage, ideas, or maybe even the Revolutionary War? Canadian money has hockey on the back of it. That makes sense because it represents Canadian culture. If you designed a crest for your family, would it include dinosaurs and the Motion Picture Association of America logo? No. What the hell does that have to do with your great-grandparents, your family, your kids? Sorry to dumb this down at the start, but your family crest would have actual symbolism that represents your family. A glowing eye on an Egyptian pyramid is just weird unless you understand the occult significance of it. From the perspective of the elite and the 1% of the 1% who tell jokes smoking cigars with Jared Kushner, we proletariat are really not meant to understand the symbolism on the back of the dollar bill. Obviously, there's no possible way a pyramid with a glowing eye represents anything we know of as American history or heritage. Why are many of the words on the dollar bill in Latin? Didn't we speak English in 1776? I doubt a Chinese yuan references anything in Russian, or the Chinese renminbi has a tiny watermark of John Wayne on it. If this is supposed to be the melting pot for those seeking freedom coming here from all over the world, why would we pay homage on the bill? Why would the United States pay homage to the Latin of ancient Rome? Didn't these Roman devils have slaves? Why use Latin on the bill when not one part of this country's founding has anything to do with Rome? Ah, but it does, Captain Ogren. Perhaps that's the point. What the hell is Novus Ordo Seclorum below the pyramid? Well, that means New Order of the Secular Age, or basically, New World Order. Conspiracy theorists are deemed nuts for talking about the New World Order, and it's right there on the back of the dollar bill. Really? What about this on the dollar? In God we trust. Oh, that's easy, people will say. That's easy. It means we believe in God in the United States. Really? What God? Why do you believe it must be the Christian God? Perhaps because you believe the rote lines we've all heard our entire life about the United States being founded as a Christian nation? Even if that's so, even if 100% true, with all the political correctness of the last 30 years, think about it. How could "in God we trust" remain on the dollar? Aren't we supposed to have separation of church and state here? Aren't they tearing out Civil War statues and removing the Confederate flag from every building in the South? All this, and they can't remove a line about God on the back of the dollar bill? Are you kidding me? Why is it written in all caps, "In God we trust"? Look, every liberal group in the world, reading thousands of Atlantic magazine articles, would be suing since about 1980 to remove that line, as it would portray the United States as favoring one God over another. Another group, the atheists, would be suing for another 20 years to remove any reference to God whatsoever on the bill. If anything we know of as the legal system is real, they would have easily won that case, because we've all been told our entire lives that religion has no place in government. We were told that in first grade. We're told about separation of church and state. Yeah, I know that's not in the Constitution. So what? Most law is case law and precedent. The language of "in God we trust" in the dollar is never even discussed, is it? Not even on the Rachel Maddow show. Wouldn't a leftist manwich like Rachel Maddow be very upset about God being referenced on the thing that she uses to buy her hormone injections every month? Why is "in God we trust" a permanent fixture on the bill decade after decade? Because most people have no idea what is really going on or what that really means. What's this saying on the back of the dollar bill? Annuit coptis? Yeah, it's Latin for "honor our endeavors." Honor whose friggin' endeavors? What endeavors? Why say it in Latin? Why is there a glowing eyeball staring back at anybody who whips out a dollar bill to buy a small coffee? Again, this is where proper research sources really matter. If you search the eye on the back of the dollar bill, the first 2 pages of Google will be filled with a bunch of bullcrap articles on the Eye of Providence and all manner of nonsense. It's all meant to mislead. You'll find crap like this. The Eye of Providence, also known as the all-seeing Eye of God, symbolized God watching over humanity. That's an actual quote from one website, the way I wrote it down years ago. Give me a break. Think about it. If that were true, and it's beaten into us from birth that this government must be religion neutral and not favor one religion over another, how could the story of the Great Seal on our most important document, most important to most people, the dollar bill, be talking about potentially a Christian God? It's just not possible if things are as they tell us they are. Think of it. If it in any possible way seemed to favor the Christian God, it would have been thrown off the bill in a court decision decades ago. Hey Matt, you conspiracy theorist son of a bitch. Who says it's talking about the Christian God? It says "in God we trust." Who says it's not talking about Muslims? You can insert Allah if you want. What about the Chinese? They can insert Buddha. What's wrong with generally saying "in God we trust" to inspire people? It's said in a generic way because "in Jesus we trust" wouldn't be fair. Really, genius? What about the Indian Hindus with many gods? Over 1 million Hindus are American citizens, and they're not just here on H-1 visas to prepare your tandoori chicken. You think they would have won a lawsuit years ago to remove "in God we trust" when they have many gods? A kid who passed the bar last week could have won that case. If you could grant a temporary law license for the day to a homeless man, the way Jack Crawford faked Clarice Starling's credentials in Silence of the Lambs, a homeless drunk could make a decent enough presentation to have the Supreme Court remove "in God we trust" from the back of the dollar bill. Again, Hindus have multiple gods: Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Kali, Krishna, others. "In God we trust" doesn't work for them, does it? Forget the Indians. Let them just worry about your tandoori. What about the Scientologists and the Tom Cruise types? What about the 50 other religions? What about the American Indians? They should have a bit of standing here, who I call super citizens because they preceded the corporations in the legal fiction known as the United States of America. Indigenous people have many gods, so "in God we trust" doesn't mean anything close to what people think it does, and you certainly can't Google search to see what it really means. Matt, you must be some kind of asshole. Are you saying that we're being intentionally lied to when websites tell us about the all-seeing eye of Providence and the importance of the United States being in the Christian God's graces by putting it on the dollar bill and "in God we trust"? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. You're being lied to. Did you just start reading this book? However, many of these sites, I contend, are not intentionally trying to lie to you about this glowing eye. The information is simply where their own research took them. Of course, the originator of the information is the liar. This is another situation where I beg you to stop running to Google and to Wikipedia for answers, and to simply put this book down or whatever you're reading at the time and think hard with your inner knowing, with all the genius inside you, the genie in you, the ingenious. How easy is it to brainwash a population when they are trained like dogs to run to Google for every answer? Or, "Alexa, should I scratch my butt right now?" "Okay, Google, can I take a piss now?" That may be the next phrase or phase of this technology, asking your phone for permission. It may soon be like Red in the Shawshank Redemption. You won't be able to squeeze a drop without your phone's permission. Okay, so let's regroup here. Let me get this straight. Other than in a Monty Python film, the Christian God has never, ever been depicted as an eye. But that's the eye of God according to the government. That's not supposed to show any religious preference. If you look at the eye atop the Egyptian pyramid on the back of the dollar bill, it's just like a regular man's eye. Look at it closely. It even has an eyebrow. I see an eyebrow. Now, I don't think you need 4 years of divinity school to understand that no one anywhere in the world has ever depicted any God in that way, let alone the Christian God. At least they didn't eyeshadow God's eye in the picture in support of transgender movements. Therefore, and quite obviously, it's not the eye of any God that you think. It's not what they say it is. It's something else. Something they know about and you don't. They're the initiated. You're the profane and the great unwashed. I don't fully understand the eye myself, and I've been doing hardcore research on this stuff on and off for about 10 years. The purpose of this section is not to explain everything and to guess exactly what they're teaching at every single lodge at the 32nd level. I don't know that. I'll never know that. It's to explain to people in general they know nothing about the absolute basics of the world around them, and the world that's presented to them from top to bottom is an absolute fraud. Almost everything on the Great Seal and the back of the dollar bill is code and symbolism for something. Let's talk a bit about secret societies, because they're the ones that created or carried forth the symbolism. Everybody's heard of the Freemasons. There are thousands of them in the United States. Many even adorn their car with a bumper sticker of their symbol, the square and compass. This is not conspiracy. At the ground level, it's probably no big deal. Most Masons are likely of about the third degree, which is Master Mason. They're normal people with a local lodge that may benefit the community. However, here's the rub. There are 33 degrees of Freemasonry that we know about. How do we know there are not more degrees we don't know about? If the third degree is a Master Mason, what do the few at the top, around 33 degrees, understand about how the world really works? Generals in the tinfoil army like me, who have studied reality for many, many years, believe the people at the top of these secret societies know something about the nature of reality itself. Don't believe me? Knock on the door of your local lodge and ask to borrow their most sacred books and texts. See what happens. If there are ancient books and tomes reserved for Masons close to the 33rd degree, what do you think are in those ancient books? Archie and Jughead comic strips? They understand a lot of stuff that is kept secret from we normal people. The butchers, the bakers, and the candlestick makers. It's almost assured the third degree Master Masons at your local lodge don't know 95% of what's reserved for the top. Without writing 100 more pages, here is the abbreviated Cliff Notes version. A level of knowledge existed on this earth a long time ago. How do you think the pyramids got built? That example list could go on for a few pages. Some people still possess that knowledge. Most of it was lost on the general population, or intentionally taken or hidden from the general population. You and I are not privy to that knowledge. A few groups, and those at the top of those groups, have carried forth some of the ancient knowledge. That's basically what's going on. There's almost no other explanation. Tens of thousands of pages have been written about the Freemasons, so I won't go into it at length, nor do I know enough to do that. But just know with about 100% certainty, when you find groups of men who run every aspect of this world, you find these men are Freemasons or in other secret societies. Our first president was a Freemason. The Apollo 11 astronauts posed for pictures wearing their Freemasonic rings. Getting back to the Great Seal for a moment, it was President Franklin Roosevelt and Henry Wallace, Secretary of Agriculture, both Freemasons, who decided to begin printing the Great Seal on paper money in 1934. Just so you know, the Knights Templar today is a path through Freemasonry, but a path not all Freemasons choose. Another interesting note, Henry Wallace graduated from his position as Secretary of Agriculture and went on to serve under FDR as the 33rd Vice President of the United States. What's the matter, you asshole? What are you saying? You can't get anywhere in this material world without being in the club? Yeah, basically. Those at the top are in the club. George Carlin told us in his most famous stand-up skit all about it. Go watch the movie Skulls with Paul Walker. Of course, Skulls meant to be Skull and Bones. In Skulls, Paul Walker is awarded on his initiation. He's given a red sports car. And then Paul Walker died, I think 13 years later. I have to look into that. I think 13 years later in a red sports car. That's the way this reality script plays out, folks. No matter what is real, no matter what is fake, a reality script plays out. That's talked about in other chapters. We need to get back to the point. Yeah, the top of this material world is reserved for those types of initiates or those that have certain connections in certain societies. No doubt about it. Sure, anybody can work 80 hours a week, slave away. You can own 3 McDonald's franchises, and you could potentially make it to VP level at Merck, making $350,000 to $450,000 a year. And certain stockbrokers are regular people, and they get into a situation in the fraudulent stock market where they can make about $1 million a year. But that ain't anywhere near the very top of the shining pyramid on the back of the dollar bill and what it represents. That ain't even in the same universe as the people that have real money, real power, and you need, us proletariat would need to slave away to get it, to work 80 hours a week to get it. As Jules said in Pulp Fiction, that ain't even the same effing sport. As secret as many of these societies still are, the Freemasons are pretty much out in the open and in bright spotlight compared to other secret societies that exist in relative shadow. Some are recognized, like George Bush's and Batman's Skull and Bones. Even the lesser known names carry their strange legends back centuries where they influenced and controlled kings, queens, and popes. Names like Rosicrucians, even Alex Jones, very proud of his Rosicrucian family background. Doesn't claim to be one, talks about it often. At least when I used to listen to that fraud. There's the Knights of Malta, the OTO, Golden Dawn, Priory of Sion. Yeah, same one from the movie. Opus Dei. Yeah, also in the movie. Druids, Golden Cross, the Bilderberg Group, Knights Templar, which again I was told is associated inside a path of Freemasonry. There are other names. I've never been in a lodge. I don't care to be. I'm not going to research this subject anymore when it's very clear what the power structure on this earth represents and how they're clearly associated with these types of secret societies. Even the general term Illuminati, it's a catch-all, seems to be a descriptor for all these groups. Some people say it's possibly a unique secret society. I don't know. I don't care to know. Spend an hour researching a man named Adam Weishaupt and all the strange things going on right around the time of the American Revolution with his Bavarian Illuminati. What a coincidence. His great work started in 1776 also. The most recent example of these secret societies coming to the forefront and showing everybody how they control everything was the 2004 election when both George Bush and John Kerry, both skull and bones from Yale, faced off against one another for the presidential fake election. What an amazing coincidence, people thought. Of all the men and women in all the country, from all the gin joints in all the world, we had two skull and bones Yale men facing off against one another. Now, who could possibly believe what we've been told? That this country puts forth open elections, which allows just anybody to become president. Isn't that what our mothers told us? You could be president. Barack Obama was a sock puppet thrown into a script written specifically for him. They figured they had to throw in a non-white and an unknown at some point, somebody that didn't come from a Yale secret society, somebody that had a touch of ethnicity, so then people would continue to believe that the system was real. The fact that he was just a little bit black appeased about 30 million black people to go vote for him, and they're the group most pissed off at the system today. So the system has to appease them with one hand, while cooking up stories about cops shooting young black men in the other hand. Now, which hand is holding the wand and which hand is holding the magic hat? It's all a show. Using the Obama sock puppet bought them some time with the black community. Because of Obama, millions of black people became less angry and less skeptical of the system. See, if you believe in Obama, then by default, you must believe the election system and everything else is real. For years, black people sensed there's a subtle and sinister control system here, and all this talk of anyone can achieve any office in this free country was all bullshit. They knew that was bullshit. The Obama story confused all of that well-founded skepticism, and it still does today with the black community. When Obama didn't do one thing for the black community, not one thing, it should have woken up about 20 million people to the fact that the entire system's a massive fraud. Nobody woke up. Even today, the black community generally takes pride in Barack and Michael. It's worse with whites. Almost all of us white fools still believe in all aspects of the system and buy into all the bullcrap their mother told them that they or anybody else can achieve president. You can be president someday, son or daughter. Really? Let's see. If Hillary Clinton would have been, quote, elected in 2016, that would have been 28 of 36 years of either having a Clinton or a Bush as president. 28 of 36 years, with a little Kenyan hybrid thrown into the middle to convince people that things are actually real. Have you ever looked into the research as to how many presidents are related to each other and are also related to the Queen and other nobility? Amazingly, there are few people reading this, screaming at me that Trump's election of a rebel proves that elections are real. No, it doesn't. He's another stooge. It's obviously all an act. Trump gets in, the rebel. Does he restore the Bill of Rights? No. Did he mention there are any violations of the Bill of Rights? No. The trajectory of government hasn't changed one iota from what Hillary would have done. Did he immediately pull us out of all these Middle Eastern quagmires and wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, end the slaughter in Yemen? No, he did none of that. He's a mouthpiece, a stooge. It's a stage show. There's more debt, of course. System needs more debt, or it would all collapse in on itself. But there's more war. Well, more war is good because you need to float more debt for more war. There's, of course, more scandal to keep the Access Hollywood crowd distracted. Because eventually somebody may ask for an actual restoration of the Bill of Rights. So all that scandal keeps people focused on that stuff. And maybe he's going to grab another pussy. We can't have a restoration of the Bill of Rights, so just insert some more scandal. That'll keep all the idiots distracted. Look, Trump is the same old puppet. It's just a completely different type of sock. Let me go away from the reading for a second to talk about something I mentioned a few minutes back about we see all these presidents are related to each other and are distant cousins and related to the Queen and the whatever royalty still exists in the Netherlands. It's all tied in and, what's the first thing? This is a great exercise into the societal construct. What's the first thing even many of you truthers thought? Oh yeah, that little girl did a research project and she went in front of her sixth grade class and showed all the lines and how President Bush relates to President Obama and all this. And it was that little girl who did that research. You know what? That's total bullcrap. Do I know? No, but it's called reading the Matrix Code. When I heard that story, some little girl did some research and, oh, come on. I immediately said, that's total bullcrap. The system wants this information to come out. It's delivering truth in some weird way, so they'll do it through the little girl's project. As isn't she diligent and wonderful? Now, do I know for sure? No. But does it stink? And am I 99% sure that's exactly what it is? It's a fake story about some little girl doing research? Absolutely. They wanted the information to come out, and that's the medium they used to deliver the message. Okay, so what's the point of talking about all these secret societies? We know with 100% certainty the leaders of these groups ran the world centuries ago. Why would anyone think anything's changed? That's the point. Of course, anybody's first inclination is not to believe that the same secret societies are still running the world and nothing's changed. Well, this is a democracy, and men and women are elected, right? To think the massive power of these types of secret societies and organizations just went away is incredibly naive. Above all, what is most coveted by these sickos? The drug of choice for all time. It's the love of power. Through all of recorded history, the men who ran these secret societies grabbed more power than the common man or woman today can possibly fathom. As was mentioned, kings and popes were influenced but more likely controlled. Do you think a century ago each secret society called a meeting and something like this was maybe said? About a century ago? Thank you all for coming today, my brethren. As you know, we secret societies have had a great time running the world for centuries. But I say, our time is over. In light of the coming age of free elections and free people and all of the wonderful communities around us, we should disband and walk away from the power that our forefathers built for us over a millennia. It was nice being in control of absolutely everything. But let's turn the reins over to the common man and the common woman going forward. It's their time to shine. Some of you may actually enjoy retail jobs, but you'll dread the Christmas season. Think about it. Is there any chance that happened? It's like Darth Vader visiting a young Luke on Tatooine and handing him the scepter of the galaxy, craving a little R&R for himself, and maybe to get some Jamaharon on Ryza. We know it didn't happen. Because if you look closely today, you can still see the secret societies in the most influential positions on Earth. As I just mentioned, what an incredible coincidence that both men running for president in 2004 were from the same secret society, Skull and Bones. That's not even a big one. Let me ask you, Miss Juliet, what's in a name? It's called secret. Secret society, remember? A society by any other name would smell the same, but it wouldn't control governments as easily. The people who really run things, and that's not presidents or prime ministers in the UK, they don't give themselves away, the people that really run things, by running around the world with the coat of arms of their 800-year-old secret society stitched or embroidered into their ties. Who Theresa May really answers to is not plastered on her scarves like you would shop at the mall wearing the Nike logo of Hermes. You simply don't recognize the secret society affiliations of the people who appear on the news every night, but they exist. Every once in a while you get a story like Bush, Kerry, Skull and Bones, that sort of thing. And since it's been around 20 years since that charade, we think that that sort of thing is rare. Oh, it's not rare. They have their tentacles in absolutely everything. The people who run the world run the corporations. The top corporations run the politicians. Every once in a while they may let someone who has not been initiated into the top level or into their inner circles, they may let them in to serve some coffee. Obama types in office allow people to generally believe in the system. But these Cinderella stories are scripted and rare. Remember that total unknown who won the Senate seat in Texas and then just missed being nominated for president? That jackass is called Ted Cruz. When anyone looks closely, we find that his wife is ex-Goldman Sachs, having done work for the Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah, just a coincidence. If there's a long table where things on this earth are decided, Goldman Sachs and the Council on Foreign Relations have seats at the table, right up front. I'm sure his wife's affiliations, just a coincidence. She probably applied to a temp agency who then placed those positions. These stories are not one-off coincidences. There's a club, and you ain't in it. I ain't buying it. I ain't buying it. My mama told me anybody can be president. I can be president if I work hard enough. Believe what you want, and all the other naive notions of what you want the country to be versus what it really is. I can't spend chapter after chapter on this subject. If you pay attention and look beyond the rosy world views constructed for you, the people in these societies still run the world. If you were elected president, it would only be because you were allowed to be elected president, and you'd carry forth their age-old agenda. Even if they really tally votes and someone was actually allowed to be elected president, on the day of your, quote, victory, you'd be introduced to a group of people that you didn't expect to be your boss. You didn't think the president had a boss? Even though there wouldn't be stereotypical thugs standing behind your new masters wearing black gloves with brass knuckles, there wouldn't have to be. You would simply get a sense of what would happen to you if you didn't walk the line. Compared to these terrifying creatures visiting you after your victory in the Oval Office, you would long to deal with normal thugs like Tony Soprano and Father Guido Sarducci. Heck, you'd rather deal with Thanos from the Avengers movie, and he beat up the friggin' Hulk. These new masters of yours as president probably wouldn't be exactly like Lord Voldemort, but it would feel about the same. Who knows what type of creepy things middlemen like Jared Kushner bow down to? As I said, I don't know exactly what kind of thing is behind that last curtain, and I'm done chasing it. But in general, this is how the world works. There's the prime minister and the president, and then there's his or her boss, and then probably another layer. Yes, Donald Trump decides nothing. He may not even pick out his own tie color. The elect exactly who they want to elect. The trajectory of government never changes. Do wars stop? Never. When the president chosen to win the Nobel Peace Prize gets elected, wars actually increased. Does the size of government ever decrease? Is spending ever placed under control like they demand during their election press conferences? Isn't that what Republicans are supposed to do? Fiscal responsibility? Cycle after cycle of Republicans, and no one ever notices. No one ever demands anything, and then we'll get them in the next election. Amazingly, just when the Republicans want to do something, they're blocked by Democrats. The moment they step in to implement these cuts, they're blocked. Nothing is ever blocked. That's the cooked up story so people believe it's all for real. They desperately want to believe it's all real, so you don't have to give them very much. How is anything blocked if the Democrats controlled, as they did many times, all three major parts of government under Obama, for example, and the Republicans had all three major parts of government under Trump? No politician or party ever does anything that they ever promise, and amazingly, nobody holds them to account. Are all of your freedoms suddenly restored by liberals when they have power? Or do you find there are even more laws, more regulation, more code, more ordinance, and more kids who can't legally run their lemonade stands? So, when mothers tell their sons and daughters that you can be president someday, I'm sorry, they're not telling the truth. Telling your dwarf son he can someday take over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record for centers in the NBA looks like good parenting in comparison to saying your kid can be president. But oh, how the Obama sock puppet perpetuated that myth. Oh, anybody can come in if they're a successful little community organizer. The presidency's open to anybody. All hail Michael and Barack. The next 30 seconds is not child or kid friendly, but it's real, so I have to present it. As we've discussed, they want us in a never-ending quest to understand what the heck is really going on. But the carrot they dangle is always just out of reach, and they never put enough puzzle pieces in the box so you can get a clear image. At the bottom of the box, there's a note. Dear Truth Seeker, if you find there are not enough puzzle pieces in this box to form a clear image, call the initial Obamacare phone number and order the puzzle pieces that you need. The number is 1-800-FUCK-YOU. That's not a joke, by the way. That's the exact letters that they, well, not the exact letters. They're the letters that spelled out in the initial Obamacare phone number was 1-800-FUCK-YOU. Now, it was 1-800-F1-UCKYO. One has no letters associated with it. So just like a gematria thing, you remove it. 1-800-FUCKYO. Oh, they would have put the YOU, except 7 digits means they can only go to YO. Now, of all the numbers, all the people in government, they could have taken and picked anything. Anything. They could have eminent domained a number. You think that's a coincidence? 1-800-FUCK-YOU for Obamacare. No, that's how the world works. Society and its level of general insanity cannot be fully understood. You'll see that what we must strive to understand is ourselves. This is the second part of this book. The first part is a complete and unabridged presentation of the fraud. They pull us outside of ourselves with the non-stop distraction of society. If you are a bull, the matador of society always has his red cape waving in your face. This keeps you from what you're supposed to do in this life, which can only be found inside yourself. You'll never see the true path if you're always focused outward, focused on the red cape that the matador is flinging in front of your face. When you see how nothing works like you thought it did or how they say it should work, living in a simulation is one way to explain the madness. I keep that on the table. Signs and symbols rule the world, not words or laws. Confucius. In summarizing the dollar bill section, please understand that secret societies love their symbolism. Any wise man would tell you that the truth of this world is hidden in plain sight and in symbols. Confucius was pretty smart, right? You think he just made that shit up? Signs and symbols rule the world? I just made it up. Do you think Confucius was just kidding around? That quote is literal. Read it and study it 100 times. Think about it every time society puts a symbol in your face. You may have heard of sacred geometry and gematria, which is beyond the scope of this book and written about in 100 other books. Everything back to ancient Egypt and Babylon has meaning hidden in symbols. They put the symbols so they understand it, and the dummies like you and I don't understand it. But other symbols are meant to bypass your conscious and to go right to your subconscious and have your subconscious interpret what's seen. Again, these are things that slide right past the bong resin inside your clogged frontal cortex. Then they put the symbol on a t-shirt, and we dummies actually pay money to wear the symbol, like Nike. Nike should be paying us for 1, the free advertising, and 2, the free mind control. Okay, Matt, fine. Confucius talked about the importance of symbols. So what? That bastard lived like 1,000 years ago. It probably did apply way back when. Why the hell would it apply now? Ah, but it does, Captain Ogren. Have you seen the 10-story penis just a few blocks from the White House? No, it's not a fan-fed inflatable in front of a sex toy shop. It's the 10-story dick of the Washington Monument and its 666 coded dimensions. The common man vacations in Washington, D.C. and goes up into the Washington Monument urethra like semen and has no idea what the hell's going on, what any of it means, or what he's going up into. They're climbing up inside of a giant phallus. I've talked about this before, but it's so fun to mention again. A 5-second Google search shows what the obelisk symbol really represents in antiquity. It stems from ancient Egypt because it represents the cut-off penis of the god Osiris. Ah, you must be mistaken. There must be some other meaning, Matt. They wouldn't do that on the Capitol Mall. Are you kidding me? The reasons for displaying the obelisk on the National Mall, I don't know, it probably means like good fortune or something. No, there's no other interpretation but a dick. Even if there were, knowing this is what the ancient obelisk represents for thousands and thousands of years, why on earth would they craft a 10-story one if it's not exactly what they intended? The groups of dummies vacationing around DC in tour buses, like Forrest Gump coming in and Jenny coming in for the march, looking at all the pretty architecture, they're called the profane by the initiated in secret societies. That's not a term of respect, kind of like the great unwashed. The group who built the dick on the National Mall are called the initiated, or they call themselves the illuminated, the elite, or the priest class, as Bill Cooper would say. In what we say aloud, we're done giving these creatures any more titles of respect. Personally, I need a better name than George Bush Creature, and if you have any recommendations, I'm open to it. Unless you think all of these secret societies, though, are just guys playing dress-up for an excuse to drink scotch away from their wives, there is an occult knowledge somewhere there that's been passed down through these lodges for a millennium. All those in the lodges don't have access, obviously. Only the top levels, in my opinion. There are things these people know that 99.999% of people walking the streets do not know. There are things that a 32nd level degree Freemason would know that a 3rd degree, quote, Master Mason wouldn't have the first clue about, in my opinion. I don't have any insider information. I don't know anybody in a secret society. I simply observe reality, and I'm not influenced by the faux shepherds like Anderson Cooper who attempt to lead humanity in a certain direction, which is mostly off a cliff. Much of this is common sense and can be easily researched if you know where to look outside of Wikipedia. The works of Albert Pike, like Morals and Dogma, are available on eBay for crying out loud. Pike predicted World War I and World War II before they actually happened, and a third World War. It's possible we're in World War IV right now, as the Cold War was the third, and this War on Terror is the second. But it depends on your definition because the first two were cooked up, and the last two world wars were downright fake. Albert Pike didn't get lucky like some boardwalk soothsayer may pull the right tarot card while going through Dorothy's purse while her eyes are covered. Albert Pike and people around him in their secret societies plan out our reality in many times 100 years in advance. And if this is so, they crafted the exact situation that led to world wars. Then, of course, they played both sides to profit. But world war is not about profit. That's a tertiary benefit to those who don't need money. Dead bodies are, to them, a special kind of currency. I'm going too far, too soon. Let's get back to the point, wrap the chapter up. The back of the dollar bill is covered with the number 13 in symbolism. The number 13 is drenched with occult history. Why do you think people are a bit afraid of Friday the 13th? There are 13 illuminated stars above the eagle on the back of the dollar bill, 13 arrows, and 13 leaves clutched by the eagle. There are 13 layers in the pyramid, 13 letters in E pluribus unum. From many comes one. Again, why the Latin? Don't we speak English here? To this, quote, elite, the citizenry are those poor devils who've been given an incorporated name and a number upon their birth. The masses who have had their soul print taken at birth, a baby's soul print, they're the uninitiated and the profane and the stupid voter, according to Jonathan Gruber, who wrote Obamacare. If today's masses and asses do not know the answer to something, as we talked about, they'll search Google, and Lord Google will tell them the reality they're meant to know. To answer the question about 13 appearing all over the back of the dollar bill, Lord Google will surely tell them that 13 represents the original 13 colonies. Yeah, sure. What a friggin' joke. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. No, that answer is put there for the retards to find and then to blindly accept. It's likely just the other way around, that there were 13 colonies because of the occult significance of the number 13. Are you beginning to see it yet? Are society's pat answers still good enough for you? Therefore, like everything else that you thought you knew, you'll find the real truth is something else. So what is that eye staring at me at the top of that pyramid on the back of the dollar bill? Luckily, that eye is not eye-shadowed just yet. Give it a few years. None of us profane know for sure. My interpretation should be somewhat close. First off, the Rothschild-type controllers didn't create that symbolism themselves. Like most things that they do, like the swastika, what was once good, they attempt to take for themselves and corrupt. The original meaning is often stolen and corrupted. The symbol of the eye in ancient cultures like India and Egypt is generally about enlightenment and being able to see the world clearly and connect to the divine through one's third eye. The third eye is another name for the pineal gland in the brain. A conversation about the pineal gland related to ancient cultures, wondrous abilities, and the occult is a 400 or 500 page book in and of itself. A practice of ancient cultures and of the tiny few people today who still carry this ancient knowledge is to try to open up the pineal gland in the brain so one can see. Now what the heck that means is complicated. What wondrous abilities seeing with this third eye affords us is beyond our scope. It's beyond my understanding, but I'm convinced it's absolutely for real. Let's just say that at a minimum, if one opens up, or as Levette would say, pops their pineal gland, one can look around and see through the ridiculous matrix code of this world. At best, some say it's a direct connection to the divine or God, at best. At worst, it lets you cut right through the bullshit. Now this is not just legend and lore unless you think thousands of the smartest people who ever lived over thousands of years were just spewing some nonsense when talking about the power of the third eye. I've heard too many people talk about it and too many people cite reference. This is absolutely real. All of them weren't just smoking the same peyote. The puppet masters of this world are all about hiding the power that you possess and making each generation even dumber, so they don't look for the power that everybody once had. If Don Lemon never mentioned it, never talked about a third eye, that's more proof to me that it's true. If Don Lemon were to talk about it, I'd be skeptical of it. I'm thrilled then he never mentioned it. Even the Vatican has a big giant pine cone statue out in their scandal-ridden yard. Either the Pope loves evergreen trees, or they're also carrying forth ancient occult knowledge of the third eye. Occult means hidden. Pine cone, pineal gland. The word occult also relates to the eye through the word oculus. Cataract patients get ocular lens implants to correct their vision. The famous Egyptian representation of the Eye of Horus takes the same shape as the pineal gland in the brain when viewed or sliced a certain way. You know it, that's the symbol corrupted by Katy Perry in a music video. The Michelangelo depiction of God and Adam on the Sistine Chapel depicts the pineal light. Take a close look at that image on the Sistine Chapel ceiling sometime. No need to go, just Google image it. God is inside what is clearly a brain. That shape is no coincidence. Adam and his fingers just a few inches away from touching God or potentially opening his third eye or pineal gland, but he's not quite connected to it. There's no coincidence in this endless symbolism. 99.99% of people think it's just a pretty picture on a ceiling. that Michelangelo painted upside down, of course. Maybe God was leaning ever so close to Adam atop the Sistine Chapel to award him with a new Magic Johnson. Take a look at that thing. Take a look at what Adam's packing on the Sistine Chapel. Now, we've all experienced shrinkage, but that's the smallest pecker ever depicted by a Renaissance master. The pineal gland even has roots in the Bible. Genesis 32:30, KJV. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Matthew 6:22, KJV. The light of the body is the eye, and therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Genesis 1-3, KJV. And God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then came the sun and the moon. The third eye is also called the pineal light. As usual, and for lack of better words, today's, quote, controllers, or George Bush creatures, let's get a better name, they take what was once a divine thing and they hijack the meaning. They hijack it to shape reality the way they want it. The hijacking of a once good concept seems to be displayed on the back of the dollar bill. The pyramid represents the literal structure of society in this realm. Those illuminated with their eye open are depicted at the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid represents a select few of illuminated ones, or Illuminati, if you will. As you move down the levels of the pyramid to the wider base, you get lower and lower on the caste system. At the bottom, you have what they consider to be the lowest of the profane. It's the masses and the asses section. It's basically you and I and everybody else in an NFL stadium. Even though there are tens of thousands of people like me and you who have figured out parts of this maze, we are still considered the profane to these people. I'm not initiated, nor do I care to be. I perform my own humiliation rituals here in my house every Friday and Saturday night with my cat as I go dateless weekend after weekend. Finally, many smart people will tell you it's the eye of Lucifer on the back of the dollar bill. Now, I know that's bizarre to many people coming across that for the first time. Trust me, there is a solid basis for those proposing that. When Lucifer and Satan is mentioned in society, they want you to think of a red devil with a pitchfork. That's misdirection on purpose. Many smart people have written about the elite on this planet looking at Lucifer as the light bearer, thus the word Lucifer, which implies finally being able to see clearly. Others say this eye on the dollar represents their main star that they pay so much homage to in their astrology, Sirius, the dog star. Reverse the letters, God star. Others would say to use all the explanations in aggregate, and there's a little bit of truth in every single one. Sirius, eye of Horus, eye of Lucifer, general enlightenment, pineal gland, third eye, etc., etc. In some way, all of these concepts are tied together. We see this over and over again, and there is no one clear explanation. For ways I don't fully understand, I believe everything tied together is almost always the correct way to look at something, versus isolating. I've found that everything seems to come back around and tie together, especially how all these gods seem to relate to each other far beyond just Zeus to Jupiter. The control structure of today is literally in love with this eye symbolism and the one eye symbolism. Quite frankly, we're getting sick of it. If I ask you to pick 5 movie stars or pop musicians, either 4 of 5 or all 5 can be found posing for a picture covering one eye. Try it. Pick somebody. Search in Google Images, Bono, one eye picture, Michael Jackson, one eye picture, Jay-Z with a pyramid or covering the eye. Pick random stars. They all do it. Those at the bottom of the pyramid actually think this is just a coincidence, and there's only so many ways these stars can pose for pictures, so they all at some point in their lives or their careers end up covering their eye. This explanation is delusional. Every celebrity carefully poses on covers of magazines or in different places covering one eye. It's all done, of course, on purpose. Just like we find most leading men in Hollywood at some point in their career played a role in a dress. Very interesting. Look into it. At some point, almost all leading men, even if it was just in a Saturday Night Live skit, put on a dress. Very interesting humiliation ritual. We find there were creepy eye mosaics in the subway tile under the World Trade Center before 9/11. There's the London Eye, which again is the 13 colonies principle carried forward. They didn't intend to build a Ferris wheel that just happened to look like an eye. It was just the opposite. They intended to build a giant eye over London, and they used the Ferris wheel as a cloak or cover so the profane don't catch on. The CBS logo is obviously this same occulted eye. It's all over the place in logos, even Nickelodeon. How was Sauron depicted in The Lord of the Rings? A fiery red eye. A crystal ball is an eye that has magical properties. The first, quote, ceremony to honor the dead just months after 9/11 at the Ground Zero spot was people forming the shape of an eye. Now some asshole right now is calling that a coincidence. The massive New Year's Eve celebration in Sydney years ago depicted a giant glowing eye. There's much, much more, but this section's getting too long. Let's sum up the attitude and the position of the profane, if anybody's listening that's involved with all this eye crap. You know what? The eye symbolism? We're sick of it. But here's a new take. This is an interesting theory. Maybe a big reason for all these eyes everywhere, all the time, back of the dollar bill and everywhere else, relates to something else. It relates to that, what I call that cosmic karma law. The sick ones in control must show us the truth, or they seem to have violated some sort of a principle where they must show us. They must hide the big things in plain sight, which means it's not hidden at all. It's just that most on the bottom of the pyramid in the masses and the asses level are too distracted with society's bubble to see it. For crying out loud, people liked the horrible movie The Martian and actually believed a man on his own, stranded on Mars, could survive by pooping on his own potatoes. Here's another spin-off of the concept just presented where they have to show you. It's actually potentially there for us. It's possible the controllers, we need a better word, of this world may not even have access to the true divine seeing or illumination that we have, we immortal spirits have. It's possible the eye on the back of the dollar bill we all think is about them, but potentially it's about the need to show you what you really are, what you really can be, so they don't violate their little cosmic court as they screw us all over. I know this is confusing, but people would rather I ponder the big ideas instead of playing it safe. So maybe a conversation like this really took place in 1934 between FDR and his cabinet member when they jointly decided to put the Great Seal back on the dollar bill. Hey, who knows how close we're getting here? But let's role play it and maybe see if we can tap into what really happened. Now FDR says, we're really going to start screwing these proles over now, Henry. But if we do that, cosmic karma law says we must give them something in return. What shall we give them, Mr. President? Let's put the most important occult knowledge in the history of all of existence on something they look down at every day. Go find the Great Seal of the United States, once a secret, and put that goddamn thing on the back of every single dollar bill in the country so these assholes look at it every day. The dumb sons of bitches won't even notice the truth of this world is in their hands all day long. Show them exactly how society works on the back of the dollar using the pyramid. Show them their potential as they pay for porn. Write New World Order in Latin to honor Rome and they won't even notice. Write honor our endeavors in Latin on the back so they honor our great work and the work of sucking them dry. Encode the number 13 in absolutely everything and the dumb bastards will think it relates to the 13 colonies. We'll even make some shit up about goddesses that have no meaning, like Columbia. Well, what if they research these things, Mr. President? When the few who can think actually get the inkling to look into what these symbols actually mean, have the breadcrumbs lead them to some fake bullshit in mainstream reference books. What do you want it to say, sir? The fake bullshit that they're meant to find. Have the Ministry of Information write some crap about the eye representing this eye of providence, which is God watching over America's manifest destiny. As assholes. Don't say what God it is. Just put it in big caps. In God we trust. Put that on there. So they think we honor the Christian God, those fools. Don't just stand there. Get Skeletor on the phone for me. I'm asking him to lunch. Now, it's pretty much the end of the chapter, but did it go down like that? Well, probably not. We hope not. Because Skeletor is an intergalactic bad guy character from the cartoon series He-Man. But, look, I'm going to make a video about this at some point, and you've heard me say being able to read the Matrix code, but just understanding how they do things, whatever is behind the back curtain, whether it's some sort of creature or artificial intelligence or technology, it doesn't matter. But you can understand how it operates. For example, when you understand how it operates, doesn't it make sense that they just love the hidden in plain sight? It's almost like they have to do it. That there's something on the back of the dollar bill. You could see why it potentially could be incredibly empowering to us, or they're showing us what we're capable of, potentially what they're not capable of. And they put it on something that we handle, or, look, we handled more cash back in the day, but something, put the truth of this world in something they touch every day, and the fools won't even realize the symbology, the power of the symbols in their hand. Don't you see, or we can agree, that's the way these guys work. Just give you a dumb example in being able to read the code of how society is presented to us. Like, look at, I thought of this the other day, and I'm just hit with these things constantly. Allen Iverson used to play for the Sixers, basketball player. He retired like a long time ago, probably about 10 years ago. So he played mostly, I guess he started in the late 90s. But in Philadelphia, he was never called Allen Iverson. He was called AI. Now, you guys will agree with me, the people that see how this world construct works, it was AI related to artificial intelligence, which didn't even really exist, or it probably did, but nobody talked about it back in the day when Allen Iverson played. But the point is, if I'm saying that actually he was called AI, that was the name that developed for Allen Iverson, and it was related mostly to representing artificial intelligence or what was coming in terms of AI or whatever. The people around me would call me the biggest conspiracy theorist jerk nut job in the world for proposing that. But you guys know, you know that we can start to sniff how they do it. And it's something as trivial as a basketball player from Georgetown just being called AI for 10 years. And it's actually a hidden meaning related to potentially what's coming. Yes, that is how they work. And we have to train ourselves to be able to see it's like they talk about layered paintings. Da Vinci painted this, but then he didn't like it and he painted over it, and then they can put it in a scanner and you could see what was painted before in layering. Everything presented is not what it seems. We have to have the eyes to see what the layer is underneath. Allen Iverson's a dumb example, but it's just to get you thinking.